Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready to dive into something a little spooky today?
Always up for a good scare, especially if it's in the name of literary analysis.
Exactly. So today we're switching things up a bit. We're doing a deep dive into a single source, a short story called The Haunted Pink Mansion.
Interesting. A haunted house story, you say. What makes this one stand out?
Well, you know how much we love to unpack the elements of a good story, right? And this one, even though it's fiction, has a lot to say about suspense, atmosphere, and what makes certain narratives so gripping. Plus, there's something about a big pink mansion with a dark secret. Well, it just makes you wonder, right?
I'm intrigued already. Is it the pink part that makes it extra creepy?
Maybe. But seriously, what is it about haunted houses, in general, that we find so fascinating? Why do we love to be scared?
That's a good question. I think it taps into something primal, don't you think? This fear of the unknown, the things we can't control. It's a theme you see across cultures and throughout history.
Totally. Like, think about that feeling when you're home alone, it's night, and you hear, like, a creak on the stairs.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Your rational mind knows it's probably just the house settling, but
there's this other part of you that can't help but wonder.
the part that remembers all those scary stories, right?
Yes. And The Haunted Pink Mansion plays on those fears brilliantly. Our main character, let's just call him Alex, moves into this grand but kind of creepy pink mansion. At first, Alex is skeptical of the rumors, the whole "this place is cursed" thing.
Classic horror trope.
Right. But Alex is drawn in, of course, by the cheap rent and the idea of living in a place with, character.
The age-old trade-off. Affordability versus potential haunting. I see where this is going.
Exactly. But then, as you might expect, things start to get weird. Alex starts experiencing all these strange and unsettling events. Creaking footsteps in the middle of the night, scratching sounds from inside the walls. There are even whispers that seem to, materialize out of thin air. And the author does a fantastic job of using these really vivid sensory details to create this atmosphere of suspense. It's like you feel like you're right there with Alex.
And it's not just sounds, is it? I was thinking about that. The story really plays on all the senses. The musty air, the feeling of a cold touch.
So creepy. It's like the mansion becomes a character itself, right?
Totally. This oppressive presence that slowly starts to envelop Alex. It's classic gothic horror, really.
It really is. And as these unsettling events start to escalate, we see another common theme in haunted house stories emerging: isolation.
Isolation. Oh, absolutely. You've got Alex all alone in this massive house, totally cut off from the outside world.
And that's when the fear starts to feel even more real, right?
Exactly. Because now Alex is questioning their own sanity. They're starting to wonder, is it me or is this place really haunted? And that's a powerful place for a story to take us.
And just when you think it can't get any worse, Alex discovers a hidden basement. And you'll never guess what they find down there.
Let me guess. A secret room.
You got it. But that's not all. Inside the secret room is, wait for it.
Mysterious mirror.
Ooh, a mirror. Now, that's just asking for trouble in a haunted house story.
Yeah.
Mirrors are like portals, right? They reflect something deeper, something beyond the surface. Right. So we have this sense of foreboding, this feeling like something bad is about to happen.
But I bet it does, doesn't it?
Oh, it definitely does. But we'll save that part for after the break.
I can only imagine what happens next.
Well, remember how I said the author uses those sensory details to really build suspense? What gets amped up in this scene? Alex's reflection in the mirror.
Yeah.
It starts to change.
Oh, no.
It's subtle at first. No longer a perfect reflection, like it's becoming distorted, almost mocking. And then those whispers that have been haunting Alex throughout the story.
They get louder, don't they? Closer.
Exactly. They seem to be coming from the mirror itself. It's like the house, or whatever entity resides within it, is trying to pull Alex in, consume their identity, make them a part of its own messed up history.
Ooh, you know what this reminds me of? It's like that classic element of gothic horror. This idea that the house has a life of its own, a personality even.
Totally. Like it's a living, breathing entity. And that's just amplified by all the foreshadowing the author uses, right?
Did you pick up on any of those clues early on, those hints that something was off about this mansion?
Oh, absolutely. Like right from the start, we get those warnings from the locals talking about the mansion being cursed, how people don't last long within its walls, and even the way the mansion itself is described. Looming, oppressive. It's almost like a predator just like sizing up its prey. It's true. It's like the house itself is this trap, slowly revealing its secrets, drawing Alex deeper and deeper into its clutches. Which brings us to the ending. I don't want to spoil it completely, but it definitely leaves you with this like lingering sense of unease.
So Alex doesn't make it out.
Let's just say the mansion claims another victim, but it's the way the story ends. With this chilling line, it's almost as if the house itself is speaking to the reader, almost like it's daring you to enter. But, beyond just the chills and thrills, I think this story touches on something a lot deeper, something we all grapple with, that fear of losing ourselves, of our identities being consumed by something we don't understand. Have you ever felt that?
Absolutely. I mean, think about the anxieties we face today. This fear of the unknown future, the constant pressure to define ourselves online. It's like this feeling that technology is reshaping our identities in ways we can't control. And that's kind of what this mansion represents, isn't it?
That's such a good point. Like, the house is a metaphor for all those aspects of our lives that feel beyond our control, right? The forces that shape our identities, our destinies even, and the mirror, the distorted reflection. It's almost like looking at ourselves through the lens of social media, don't you think?
Yeah.
Seeing a version of ourselves that isn't entirely real.
Exactly. And that feeling of not recognizing ourselves, that's something I think a lot of people can relate to, especially these days. We're constantly bombarded with images, with expectations. It's only natural to question who we are, where we fit in. It can be easy to feel lost.
It's so true. So we've talked about isolation, the unknown, this loss of identity. We've even touched upon some Gothic tropes and how they still resonate today. But I think it's important to reiterate that this story isn't just about like being creeped out, right? It makes you think. It makes you wonder, what would I do in that situation? How would I confront those fears? And honestly, is the real horror the supernatural stuff? Or is it what these events reveal about our own deepest, darkest fears?
That's what I find so clever about this story. It takes these classic horror elements, the haunted house, the creepy mirror, the whispers, and uses them to explore these bigger, more psychological themes. It's not just about scaring us, it's about making us think about what truly frightens us, the things that keep us up at night.
It's like the story is holding up a mirror, not just to the characters, but to us, the readers.
Ooh, I like that. The story is a mirror. Because in a way, isn't that what all good horror does? It reflects our own anxieties back at us, gives us a safe space to confront those fears.
Exactly. The Haunted Pink Mansion, it gives us a taste of that terror, that spine-tingling thrill of the unknown, all from the comfort of, well, wherever you happen to be listening to this. And that's what makes it so effective. It's safe, right? It lets us explore those dark corners of our minds, confront those unsettling what-ifs without actually being in harm's way. But, as we're kind of like resurfacing from this deep dive, I keep coming back to this one question, this whole idea of the unreliable narrator. We see this story, this haunted house, through Alex's eyes. But can we really trust what we're seeing? Could there be another explanation for all these creepy events? Maybe something rooted in psychology rather than the supernatural? What do you think?
You're right. We only get Alex's version of events. And that ambiguity is actually what makes the story so compelling. It leaves room for our own interpretations, our own anxieties to kind of like fill in those gaps.
It's almost as if the story itself becomes a haunted house.
Ooh, I like that. The story as a haunted house. Because it's not just about the ghosts, right? It's about the feelings it evokes, the questions it makes us ask ourselves, even long after we finished reading it.
That's a really good point. So as we wrap up here, I'm curious, what resonated most strongly with you? Was it the creepy atmosphere, that exploration of identity, or maybe that lingering sense of like, what if?
For me, it's the idea that the scariest stories, they're often reflections of our own internal landscapes, the things that we're afraid of, the haunted pink mansion. It's really a metaphor for all the anxieties and uncertainties we carry within us, don't you think?
That's a really beautiful way of putting it. And honestly, I think that's the most powerful takeaway from the Haunted Pink Mansion. Sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we create in our own minds, the ones that feed on our doubts, our insecurities, and sometimes facing those monsters, even within the safe confines of a story. Well, it can be a really powerful step towards understanding ourselves a little bit better.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this deep dive into the Haunted Pink Mansion. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the stories that keep us up at night.